Hello everyone, I'm Rishi Persad and welcome back to Racing Weekly, a podcast and YouTube show brought to you by oddschecker in association with Bet365. So much good racing to look forward to as well as look back on alongside Steve Ryder. We had some good chat last week and I think we did okay on the tipping front. And we welcome back an old pal to the show. Johnny Ward has made the journey over from Ireland. Johnny, how are you? How are things back home?
Very
got a
well.
Little one.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
He might go to the Curragh to make his racing debut on Sunday,
Wow.
So... and his grandfather might be there on the maternal side, and his grandfather was in the army and used to ride out at the Curragh, so there'll be a sense of kind of, I don't know, nostalgia there. And also my cousins are coming home from the States and they're going to the Curragh, so yeah, I love Irish Champions Festival. I think it was a great idea. And the ledger going into, like, people will say the ledger shouldn't clash with the Curragh, but I actually love it as it's kind of like I'm already thinking of the Breeders' Cup and the Down Royal racing, that day of a day of racing that goes all the way into the night. But this, like, having the ledger and the Irish interest in it, and how Aidan O'Brien works out with his jockeys, it's fascinating. And I know we're not going to see City of Troy, but I don't think it takes much away from the weekend, to be honest.
No, I think it's going to be a great weekend of racing and pretty good stuff to look back on as well, Steve.
Yeah, we had lots of good action, like you said. Montassib was probably the highlight that you and Tom both gave a nice mention to. Coped with the ground.
Yes.
But yeah, good racing to look back on. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to looking ahead to next weekend.
Yeah, there's lots to look forward to this weekend coming. But as Johnny's got all his family going to the Curragh this weekend, what we need to do is find a few winners. Before we do that, let's have a look back at the action from the last week in Racing Recap. And we're going to start with the Sprint Cup at Haydock. Montassib just getting the better of Kind of Blue. Unequal Love, a 1-3 for William Haggas. What was your take on the race, Johnny, considering that some of the 3-year-olds that we expected to be involved in the race disappointed?
Bombed out, yeah. The Irish bombed out. I suppose the main story of the race is in Cieren bombing out. But you have 2 3-year-olds who emerge with massive credit. Montassib, the draw obviously did matter, but Kind of Blue, who's obviously so lightly raced, he had his chance. I thought Flora Bermuda was really, really eye-catching, and she's just looking at her background, and if that race were run again in the sense of the traffic she met, I think she could have been second or third. For a 3-year-old filly to be taking on the horses and to run as well as she did, I thought that was an outstanding run, and she's definitely one. She is going into, she's going to Ascot, I think. She's 20 to 1 with Bet365 for the Champion Sprint Stakes at Ascot, and that's like, you'd imagine there'd be a bit of ease in the ground maybe at Ascot. Yeah. Very, very interesting runner, and the other horse stick out there, as I said, was Kind of Blue. Very well related. I think he's the dam's a half, looking on the pedigree today, Blue Point and the dam's a half sister to the Tin Man. But like, fair enough, a lot of horse bombed out, but they're 2 horse going forward I'd really like. Montassib, in hindsight, you could have backed. It was such an open-looking race. Sheeran came in under a little bit of a cloud, but I was disappointed with Gimme the Beat Boys, for a horse that has promised a lot. Buccaneer 30 ran okay, but neither really got involved. But those 2, I definitely... Flora Bermuda one I'd be definitely taking going forward.
Talking about the pace of the race, Steve, which I think was one of the most fascinating aspects of the race. Well, the horses that raced prominently, and bearing in mind Kind of Blue just sat a length behind Buccaneer Fuerte, Give Me the Beat Boys, Sheeran, and Elite Status. Those other horses backed out of it quite a lot, and Kind of Blue raced away from them. Vadream and Montassib were both at the back of the field. I thought Kind of Blue emerged with even more credit out of the race. Yeah,
it's funny. Yeah, when I watched back the race, the 2 that I wanted to take out of the race were the second and the fifth. Like as Johnny said, completely justified connections of Flora Bermuda's decision to supplement her for the race. And yeah, if she'd have found a clear passage, I think she'd have been a lot closer. It was nice for the winner. I thought Cieren Fallon has been absolutely brilliant. Obviously, he's got a good relationship with that horse. That's his 3rd Group 1, all coming in sprints. Obviously, the other 2 came on Oxted, dedicated obviously to Stefano Kirky, which was obviously nice. It's about a month since he broke his back. Like, some jockeys are just absolutely amazing. A 1-3 for William Haggas. But Kind of Blue was the one that I really wanted to be on. Like, he's lightly raced. The way that James Fanshawe trains, you'd imagine he's going to progress next year. If you look back, he won his 2 novices, has then placed in 2 Group 1s, 2 Group 2s. And he could be a really exciting sprinter. But I think we're kind of looking for that next sprint star. And just because he's been beaten in a few of these doesn't mean that he's not going to be top of the tree next year.
I'm a big fan of his rider. I think he's terrific. He's got great pair. I think if he could do it again, he would probably have just sat slightly further off the pace that was. I think that would have been the difference between winning and losing. Personally, I think in the heat of the day, I don't apportion any blame, but just the way the race unfolded.
Yeah, possibly. But looking at Oisin Murphy as well, like Oisin Murphy found a lot of trouble that really, another day he would have. Like in a race over 6 furlongs, that horse, she was delayed in a run for long. She was delayed in a run for nearly a furlong. Like it was quite pronounced. So maybe it was a race that, with sort of the different draw bias and different tactics, it would work out differently. And it did look quite open going into it, but definitely 2 horses to take out of it.
Yeah. For the champion sprint, just referring to that, Bet365 have Montassib as the 6-1 favourite. Kinross 13-2, Kind of Blue 8-1, Millstream 8, Unequal Love obviously third 14-1. Vatier, Cieren, Tyver Flow, all 16s. By the way, where do we stand on Cieren and elite status?
Well, certainly Cieren is like there didn't look to be massive. There didn't look to be massive excuses. Like he was basically beaten at halfway. So I don't know. I mean, dropping back in trip looked a good move from the way he started the season, but I don't know at this stage, to be honest.
Yeah, he was very disappointed. Elite status actually ran all right to a point, didn't he?
Yeah, I raised my doubts around Cieren on the show last week. I just thought this might have just been... He started off really early, didn't he? I think he had a run before the Guineas and then kind of has just gone. I kind of likened him to Shaquille last year. Thankfully, we're going to see Cieren next year, hopefully, rather than obviously Shaquille, who went off to start. Yeah. I thought the two Carl Burke horses, Swing Along and Elite Status, were probably just a bit too prominent and drawn on probably the wrong part of the track, to be honest. And I wouldn't give up with them next time. But yeah, there was no fluke about the winner.
All right, spin through a few of the other races from Haydock. Superior Miles won by Holloway Boy. First win since the Chesham. Did the race fall into his lap a little bit?
Yeah, I thought William Buick won this race rather than kind of tactics from the other jockeys. There was a big kind of gamble on Prague. Went off a really kind of short price for what he'd achieved so far. But yeah, I think both Danny Tudhope and Sean Levy on Witch Hunter would probably want this race back. Yeah, it was nice to see Holloway Boy obviously win that race, but Prague is a really interesting horse. So they went back because after this, I thought, how do I not really know this horse that's been gambled on in a group race? I went back through it and picked up for only 10 grand. Was with Aidan O'Brien, had never raced, and obviously clearly had lots of issues, but really well bred as you'd expect with those sort of connections early on. Galileo out of a Princess Margaret winner, Princess Noor, like really well bred and caused a bit of a surprise on his debut. Won at 40-1, but. Yeah, he's entered in the Joel Stakes at Newmarket at the end of the month, and that's often quite a weak Group 2, so you could see him having a big chance there. But he'd raced previously quite prominently and made the running and was quite keen. So whether they wanted to drop him in to try and make him settle, it just didn't really work. He was still keen in those early stages, so I imagine he'll probably go back to a more prominent ride next time in the Joel Stakes.
Holloway Boy's interesting because, like, when he did win on his debut, you're like, is this a bit of a fluke? And he hasn't won since. But it's funny with his pedigree that he's never actually stepped up. He's never run beyond a mile. And I know after the race, like just reading Carl Burke says, you see him in front, he did nothing in front. But I still thought the way he travelled through the race, he was actually quite superior on the day. And like, there's a lot of ability there if you can harness it. And he's talking about going to Doha maybe or Saudi Arabia. He's interested. He's actually entered his next entry. He's entered in Leopardstown, which I presume he won't run, and he's entered in the Cambridgeshire, which is 2 weeks later. So I imagine we will see him again. But lots of ability there. I wouldn't mind seeing him step up and trip with that pedigree anyway.
The Oldborough Cup was won by Epic Poet, a horse who he's been really good all season long. In fact, he's been very good horse for David Amaro. What did you think of the victory?
Yeah, it was funny just listening to Danny Tudhope afterwards. He's just slow, you know. I wouldn't mind owning the horse who's rated. And again, he was bought for 48 grand, 48,000 guineas in give or take autumn of last year. And you look at the money he's won since, second to Crystal Black, obviously then, and he was fourth in the Ebor as well. And this run was just, I know he's slow, but his heart's in the right place, and maybe step him up further in trip. But the two horses we mentioned there, 10 grand out of Ballydoyle, never raced by Galileo, was good, and this was good as well. 48 grand, and like, you know, maybe next season be a Gold Cup or something like that. Why not? He stays very well, and his heart's in the right place.
He's just an honest horse, isn't he?
Yeah, as much as Danny Tudhope can call him slow, he travels into his races. To be fair, he's not like one of these ones that are slow and under the pump, and they really earn their riding fee. Like, he does travel well into it. I felt a bit, not sorry for David Menizio. He picked up plenty of prize money, but he obviously had the second here, won 25 grand for that, had won the preceding race before that with Master Builder and won 50 grand. Like, David Menizio is a yard in really good form, and yeah, he's worth keeping a track of.
Now, during the week, last week, the Racing Post did a little synopsis of trainers with horses to follow, and there was a big headline the horse that headlined the whole piece was Luther of Charlie Fellows, and Charlie Fellows was saying this is as good a 2-year-old
Pre-racing and all that.
This is on, I think
It's
it might have been
alright.
on Thursday or Wednesday or Thursday last week. And voila, Luther went into the Ascendant Stakes. I was surprised he didn't start shorter than he did, but I thought he produced a really impressive performance. What did you think?
I was really impressed with him. I actually tipped him in the 3-runner race that he ran in last time when he was kind of outside of the 3. But yeah, I was really impressed. Settled well, travelled well, waited for the gap, and as soon as he got that, whoosh, away you go, and won comfortably by 2 lengths. Like, it takes a good one of Charlie Fellows to win on debut because they do just progress with age. But yeah, it was hard to know what he achieved in that 3-runner Salisbury race, but it definitely paid a handsome compliment to New Century, obviously, for Qatar racing going forward. Now, many will obviously look back at this race and I think question the form because a 40-1 shot finished second, a
Age
20-1
of Gold bombs out, yeah.
Yeah, shot finished third, but there was absolutely no fluke in this. He's been described as hopefully a Guineas horse for next year. Like, looking forward for this remainder of the year, you can see him going Royal Lodge, Futurity, probably at Doncaster. There's been mention of the Breeders' Cup. Now, for me, if you think you've got a Guineas horse, you don't go to the Breeders' Cup as a 2-year-old. So I'd prefer him to run in either the Royal Lodge or the Futurity and then put him away and train him like a Guineas horse. Come back for something like the Craven, the Greenham, and see where we go from there.
He's extremely talented.
At the prices as well, and he's by Frankel, and he said out like a lot of Frankel horses are not straightforward. They are a bit as I think one trainer said to me, a bit of their mind. And what did he say afterwards? He's as good a mind as I've trained. I thought that was very interesting because and the dam went over a mile and 2, so he's shown that sort of pace. I'd be with you. There's a horse I'm going to suggest you definitely go to the Breeders' Cup in the next few minutes that probably won't go there. And if it were him, looking at the way he travels in his races and if he's going to get stronger, I don't think the Irish sort of Guineas horse for next year are necessarily outstanding as well. And what do you say, 20-25 to 1? I definitely wouldn't put you off that. And when you have a race that's completely in mind for him, because on pedigree he'd nearly get a Derby trip. Love the way he travels in his race, and he put this race to bed. I love the way he lengthened on as well. Like you know, you're looking for Hawksbill, found a bit of trouble once he gets out, but he just breezes by. And Hawksbill's an interesting horse going forward. I don't know if the handicap reacted overly. He was rated 86 going into the race, and he has a couple of entries, but he was quite eye catching as well. Got badly caught in the run.
Yeah. 25 to 1, you're right. Luther for the 2,000 guineas next year. So
that's again to me, that's kind of trainer. Like if Aidan O'Brien trained that horse, he wouldn't be anything like that price, you know. And Aidan doesn't necessarily win the guineas that often anymore.
The September Stakes at Kempton. Now I looked at this with both happy and sad tidings because I'm happy for Kalpana that she did so well, but I feel and I fear that Hamish might have said, do you know what? I've done quite
racing.
a lot.
Yeah.
Give me a break. I'm done.
Yeah, I was really impressed. And it was one of these ones where the SP flashes up and you go, wow, that was a big gamble. Like,
so the day before, I'm like, Hamish, 15 to 8, give him his last run, what price is he?
Yeah.
Doesn't go off nearly favours.
Yeah.
No, like a proper gamble into even money. But there was, if you'd backed her, you wouldn't have had a moment's doubt, really. PJ McDonald sat there motionless. Like, he did the same as what he did in the race before the Cieren Stakes, where Jouncey obviously was a bit too keen and faded late on. But Kalpana just stretched further and further clear. Lion's Pride gave her the perfect toe into the race, and away she went. Like, they've kept her busy. She was unraced at 2, but then has made up for lost time. She's ran 7 times now this season, but won 4 of those. And even in those 3 defeats, I look back at it, and she tried to concede a penalty to Cieren in a Newcastle novice, giving him weight. Finished second to Friendly Soul and the Pretty Polly. She's obviously gone on to win a Group 2 in France. And then I think she was just a bit too inexperienced when third in the Ribblesdale at Royal Ascot. I think she just got a bit caught out. In that, but yeah, she's bolted up on her last 2 starts. You can see why Bet365 have cut her into 4-1 favourite for the filly and mares at Ascot, and whether they run her against Bluestocking is another question mark. But yeah, there's 2 top fillies.
Well, that's the thing. Like the race in Delmar is absolutely made for the filly and mares turf. Apart from the fact that, as you say, she's had a lot of runs this season, but they've messed around with the distance of this race depending on where the race is. And I was looking up this morning. Chad Brown was given out because they put the race at 1 mile and 3 this season. And European horses are absolutely dominant in this. Unless Chad Brown wins it, he's like, we're not going to even have American runners over the trip this year. And with Bluestocking, as you say, and that's kind of ground dependent as well, how the ground top. Whereas in Delmar, it's going to be top of the ground. And like, fair enough, you could say Hamish disappointed. Lion's Pride is rated 108, travel well in the race. Absolutely cantered all over her. She's already, I think, Study a Man's best horse, and he's only a young sire that's kind of getting going. And I was amazed by this. And the gamble was quite telling. I mean, it was probably about 3s the day before or something like that. And if they could, I'm not sure, I don't train a horse. I'm like, how do you train a horse now to be kind of peak in November again at the end of the season? But I'd be so tempted to go there on top of the ground. Just imagine how she'd travel on that ground in a race like that. That probably she'd nearly be favoured in, I would imagine, because if the Americans aren't particularly strong in it.
The one thing I'd say is about having so many runs is if the fillies inform as the weather's turning, you kind of hope that they'll stay in form. Once it's as the weather turns and they lose it, then you want to pack them away. But if she remains in form as the weather turns and it gets colder, then I'll be happy.
She might be quite ground reliant in the sense we might not see her again this season. But I was amazed at that performance.
She's 4-1 favourite for the fillies and mares at Ascot and Champions.
I'd say Blue Stocking's going to run
Blue
there.
Stocking's
and whether both do, I don't know.
You got to me's 11-2. We'll come back to that. Content 6-1. Obviously, we'll talk more about one or two horses that just been mentioned.
Funny as well, I should have mentioned PJ McDonald is born the same year as me, so people our age aren't apt to get excited. He was like absolutely buzzing about her after the race. He's like, this could be anything.
Well, he's had a bit of a renaissance.
Yeah,
this
he
season,
has.
hasn't he? Yeah.
It's like we can all at 41 we can get going. Like, but it was like to hear a jockey of his. You know, he has a renaissance. He's like, what does he say afterwards? You know, I'd be very excited about it. It's a very Irish thing to say. I'd be very excited. It's like, and that was like, as you should be as well. If she, I'd love to see her on top of the ground.
Okay, I'm going to take you back to a race at Newcastle earlier in the year. It's really upset me because in a Cieren won, beat Kalpana, and back in third was Rogue Encore, who I put up last week.
Mentioned. There we go.
Who I put up last week off a mark of 78 in a handicap, and didn't.
How did
didn't,
that?
No.
No, just
Funny how some of us progress and some of us don't.
Okay, the big race last Sunday, obviously in Europe, was the Prix Moulin, won by Tribalist. Caught one or two people on the back foot. Sharon's run another fine race to finish second. Henry Longfellow got going a bit late. Godolphin, Charlie Appleby said that notable speech didn't go on the ground. But Tribalist, give credit to Connections. They obviously wanted to have a go at this race because he's been quite an honest horse for them. The other thing is the ground would have been exactly what he wanted, being a Son of Fall.
Yeah, this is the 21st race of his career. Solid Group 2 performer normally, but took his chance. I mean, this was a bit of a shocker of a race. You knew kind of halfway what was going to happen, really, didn't you? I've seen a lot of people kind of criticise Ryan Moore on his ride on Henry Longfellow, but if you watch it back, like he is asking him for his effort.
He's not fast enough.
He just doesn't get there. Like it takes him until about 10 yards from the line to actually get past Caramelito and just plug on into third. Like he needs 10 furlongs next season. It definitely needs to go up in trip.
Well, it's Sylvester Susie you're looking at in the race. You're like, what's he thinking here as he turns into the straight? Like this has gone a bit far ahead now, and it's like I think they're 500 metres out. He starts quick, and he must be 7 or 8 lengths clear at this age. And you're like, and he's still travelling. He's like, I actually think Cieren kind of emerged with great credit. It was a complete mess of a race for him. And again, notable speech. Obviously, doesn't handle soft ground. As simple as that. Hadn't run on turf at all before the Guineas. But his was exceptional the last day. But I think that puts to bed any issue of him on soft ground. But this is why I love racing. Just different things happen in different races. And if you back him at 20-1, you're like, I can't believe he's 6 lengths clear coming into the straight.
Do you think that Sylvester de Sousa in his head, I mean, I'm only spitballing here, do you think he would have thought maybe Tribalist is making the pace for notable speech and is just going to go off too fast?
It's happened earlier on this season. In one of the earlier Group 1s of the season, you see a pacemaker making it. Probably, yeah. Probably, I mean, the horses have, how would you say how many starts?
Audience, you mean?
The audience,
21st
The lock-in is
start.
exactly like that, where you're like, and you have to run a pacemaker that has a chance. Otherwise, you ignore it for a reason. And in this, Tribalist is obviously a very good horse, but if this race is run again, no way does he win. Cieren is just a little bit closer. Yeah,
Sylvester de Sousa is alongside Ryan Moore, basically, with William Buick behind, and I think he's just gone, dear. Because he's the only one to make ground. Like, notable speech, he just can't act on that ground. He was wheel spinning, wasn't he? But you can see why he was slightly pushed out, like he's still only 9-4, I think, with Bet365 for the QE2. Like, he is a worthy favourite. I just think, kind of it transpired against him.
All right, let's wrap up the last week with any other races, any other horses that struck a chord with you.
I was in Navan on Saturday, and really, really nice weather. It was funny, like, because this time of year, it was the same last year. We got nice weather in September, and Navan flat meeting wouldn't normally get a crowd, and Ireland were playing England, and I was giving out that like the racing was running into half time. As it turns out, it was kind of good. It was good from them. But a couple of horses I just want to take here. I was talking to Michael O'Callaghan, and he's a horse by Blue Point, Golden Ocean, who ran in the Fillies and Mare Maiden. He reminded me afterwards that the dam who's by Galileo, I think Golden Lilac, is actually a very good horse, but she's very, very strong. And by Blue Point, Navan, a mile at Navan is the equivalent of a mile and 2 at a flat track. And North Africa, who was second, was well fancied, and she breezed by her. And I was thinking Shamey Heffernan rode her, and I was like, what is Shamey thinking as he like passes these Coolmore horses? He made a really interesting point as I interviewed him after his first winner, which was for Fozzie Stack. He said, essentially, and I'm paraphrasing, he's like, I'm enjoying the people I'm around. Basically, and I thought that's an interesting point. I think he's really enjoying life at the moment, free from maybe the pressures of his old job. But this horse in North Africa, who may run again or Golden Ocean may run again this season, given the pace that she has by Blue Point, I thought she was very, very good. She breezed on past her. The other horse is Straka. She won a sprint handicap. She'd actually beaten Irish Rumour in her previous race at Curragh. Irish Rumour rocked up and won the previous race, so her form was boosted. Travelled all over them in the Rathkenny handicap. She's not that long with Daniel Murphy. She's a sprinter on the up, but Golden Ocean going forward, mile and 2 next season, I think she'll be very good.
All right. What about you, Steve?
A couple human-wise, I thought Joe Levy was very good on Gray's Monument. He's really worth that £5 claim at the minute. He's a really good jockey. He'll be winning some big races later on in his career. I really liked Certain Lads' victory over in France. It was the first group race win for Jack Jannon and George Bass. The 8-year-old, he's
40
just
odd runs.
he's just in great form, and I thought that was really, really nice for both of them. I thought performance-wise, I really liked Luther and Kalpana, but the Reverend was really impressive in the handicap. I kind of said around William Haggas's record in that race, but we went for the wrong one, didn't we? We went for Solomon. But the Reverend, like first-time cheap pieces, has just meant that he's gone through his effort at the finish. The handicap has put him up £9 to 95. Like if he's not above 100 come the end of the season, I'd be very, very surprised. And then I think it's worth saying about Ombudsman, who won that Group 3 over in France again on Sunday. Everything went wrong for him in that race, and he still managed to win. Like it makes you think, how did that go off 18-1 on debut? But I think a further step up in trip to 1.5 miles next season, and we'll see a really nice horse. Yeah,
it was very good from Ombudsman down on the rail when he won the Prix de France d'Orange. I mentioned one horse, and that's Fair Point. Connections of Fair Point will have enjoyed a fabulous weekend, because not only did she bolt up in that handicap over a mile at Ascot, but her full brother, Tribalist, won the Moulin the next day as well. So they've got quite an exciting horse in any respect. But also, I think the thing that made the difference for her was the cut in the ground at Ascot on the weekend. She'd bolted up at Chester in a small field. She won by 20 lengths. And then I think next time out, things didn't quite pan out. I think she went to Ascot, and I think according to Rob Hornby, the stands and the whole experience was she's still a bit green. Then she went to Chelmsford, she got beat, but again, a learning experience. You saw a much more polished performance from her there. There's possibility that she might be entered for the Balmoral, I think, but they're thinking of options for her. But wherever she runs next, Fair Point from Rafe Beckett's stable, we know how good Rafe Beckett is, especially with fillies at the back end of the season. I think watch out for her. So that's a look at this week's racing recap. Right, before we get into our weekend preview, just to let you know that our sponsor Bet365 have a best odds guaranteed offer. It is available on every single UK and Irish race from 8 a.m. on the day of the race. If you take a price and the SB is bigger, Bet365 will pay you at the bigger odds. Full T's and C's can be found on the website. And now we're really looking forward to what's to come this week at Irish Champions Weekend, and of course at Doncaster for the final classic of the season. And we are going to start on Town Moor with the St Leger. And of course, this is a race that Aidan O'Brien has a stranglehold on. Plus ça change when it comes to Group 1 racing in Europe. And he's got the favourite, Illinois 7-4 with Bet365. The second favourite, Grosvenor Square, 4-1. And the third favourite, Jan Bruegel, also 4-1. or joint second favourites. You Got To Me supplemented for the race, surprisingly in some quarters at 11-2, Sunway 13-2, and then Any Price You Like, the others. So I'm going to start with you here. Aidan's gone for Illinois and Wayne Lorden's heading there. I think Sean Levy will ride one of the other two, and I'm not sure who will ride the third. Is Wayne Lorden on the right one?
It's very, very hard to say. The first thing I have to point out, this was written in the Racing Post during the week. I could not believe this. No British horse has won a British Group 1 over anything further than a mile this season. And Aidan O'Brien has dominated, obviously, City of Troy playing a big part. And I think it was actually Dave Manussi, as you mentioned earlier in the show, was on about the lack of... Because we don't really have very good sprinters over here, but it just doesn't make sense that these middle distance horses aren't necessarily around. And Aidan O'Brien has a bit of a stranglehold. But where do you start with Grosvenor Square? Because his performance the last day was utterly extraordinary. And Aidan said after the race, so the day before, I think it was my favourite race to watch the previous day when Tower of London beat him, because at one point I'd say Ryan Moore was 20 lengths back and he was looking at this horse. He was still about 8 lengths back in the final furlong and he did go by him. But this horse is quite lightly raced. The last day he took on Absurd and Piece of Heaven. Now, the one problem I'd have with the form is that the horse that finished second that day was kind of like rated in the 80s or something. But Absurd, who may have needed the run, obviously boost the form subsequently. He's not that bad. And it's kind of a fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. If two horses who were relatively well fancied, A Piece of Heaven, the two of them even vaguely gone after him, fell into an absolute hole. And Aidan O'Brien said after the race, it's very hard to know when you're riding against this horse. Do I follow him or do I wait? And I was watching the race last day. You can't go after this horse early because he's so much pace. And he has an ability, and I know it's a long straight in Doncaster. But like, if you're telling me this morning, now Aidan's going to run, I spoke to him this morning, so Bet365 admittedly are a little bit tighter than what is available elsewhere, and maybe they're right. So Bet365 is 4-1. But at the moment, Jan Bruegel, Grosvenor Square, and Illinois are going to run in the race. If you're telling me that more than two horses are going to go by him the way he's finishing his races, I cannot see it. I can't wait for this race. Who's going to pick up the ride? I imagine Sean Levy, who's he didn't he ride Frankel's 100th 100th group winner. Galileo had 100 Group 1 winners this season. I think Frank had 100 Group winners, and that was it was Sean Levy back on a Group winner for Ballydoyle. This is written in the stars. You can't tell me that this horse, the way he's progressing, is that much inferior to Illinois, who I'm still not sure what to make Los Angeles. I know he's going for the Champion Stakes. I do wonder about the middle distance crop of 3-year-olds this season, but this guy is progressing at a rate of knots, and he stays unbelievably well for a horse, and he has loads of speed. And I love the fact that he's gone over here. How the tactics will work. This is why when you go racing Saturday, be it at Doncaster or Leopardstown, how are they going to run the horse in the Champion Stakes? How are the tactics going to work here? Because Aidan will always say these horses are running on the merits, and in this race I believe that, because none of these horses is worth millions of dollars going forward as a stallion. If you're running the Ledger, you're a National Hunt stallion, pretty much. This horse, nothing's going to go with him. You know, even if Jan Bruegel, who can go forward, he's not going to go with him because he's going to destroy his chance. And if Sean Levy can get the fractions right, there's no way in the world of God 3 horses are going to go by him if you want to back him each way. And I'd be all over him at the price, to be honest. He looks so good and so promising as a stayer.
We better stop the preview. Grosvenor Square 4-1, and the selection of Johnny Ward. Do you think he's worth taking on then?
I'm going to take a photo, but the Grosvenor Square is like about a mile from my house, so I'll rock up there on Saturday and send you a little photo and say, you know, here he is. Yeah.
See, I think the presence of Grosvenor Square in this race is going to suit Illinois perfectly, because he just needs a trip. Like, he's been beaten over a mile and 2 and a mile and 4 this year, but the one time that he had that mile and 6 was in the Queen's Vase, when he was arguably the most impressive he's been this year. The Great Voltigeur is a good prep for the St Ledger. Continuous did it last year before winning. But if you look back at Kew Gardens finished 3rd in the Great Voltigeur and then went on to win the Ledger. He'd previously won the Queen's Vase on his only go over the trip. So I do think there are a lot of similarities between them. The fact that Wayne Lorden's coming over to ride rather than being an Irish Champions weekend, he is definitely the stable number one, I feel. And I think Grosvenor Square, the fact that he will go forward will mean that this is a proper test for Illinois and a stamina test. You Got To Me is fascinating because she's been so headstrong in her races. The fact that they're now going to go, well, I would say half a stride slower, but with Grosvenor Square and you don't really know. But I think she'll struggle to settle over this trip, and she could completely take off with Hector Crouch and go after Grosvenor Square and blow both of their chances. And I think that could then suit Illinois really, really well at the finish. I spoke around David Manuzio earlier on. His record in classics at big prices is quite remarkable this season. He had Tamfana finish 4th, beating a length in the 1,000 guineas, then 3rd, beating less than a length in the French Oaks. He had War Chimes at a massive price, finished 3rd in the Oaks, and then Sunway beaten 2nd, a length in the Irish Derby.
A couple of those very unlucky.
Yeah, like he's got an unbelievable record with relatively cheap purchases in these classics. So yeah, Sunway wouldn't be without a chance. But yeah, I do think Illinois is the one.
Okay, Illinois. I haven't got a very strong view, other than to say that both You Got to Me and Sunway, because of the Aidan O'Brien influence, I think that they might represent a bit of value when you look at their strength against a form against other horses, particularly the older horses. Obviously, You Got to Me did go up against Content and was closing Content down at the line. I know Content raced keenly and that was quite impressive, but she was all over Emily Upjohn and was going away from Emily Upjohn, who John Gosden, by all accounts, said ran much more like the Emily Upjohn in that race. And also Sunway, 4th in the King George, where again Devin Renuzio has mentioned that things didn't pan out ideally for him. And in that King George, the 3 horses ahead of him were Goliath, Blue Stocking, and Rebels Romance. We're talking about some of the best mile-and-a-half horses in the world there. And he was unlucky in the Irish Derby as well. I think he would have been a bit closer to Los Angeles.
Absolutely, and both bred to stay as well. It is. Yeah. The one thing about taking on Aidan O'Brien these races is tactically they are calling the shots, and certainly they will at Leopardstown, as they did in the Champions League last year. So you'll have, I don't think Grosvenor Square is going to go off a million or anything like that. He doesn't need to. The last year at the Curry, he actually settled fine. They kind of stood off him. He didn't go as hard as the day before. Maybe the angle is to back a horse now each way though if you want it, because I think the field might reduce in size. It's good to see horses supplemented, as you mentioned as well, but you've 3 very, very, like the Aidan O'Brien horses, they're all sort of, they first, nearly second and third favourite, and they're all kind of, they're 3 Galileos, Galileos who are, and I love Galileos who are progressing into the second half of their 3-year-old season, so I would be wary taking them on, particularly with a filly, but that's, I guess, tomato.
I'm going to think probably end up with You Got to Me, because Rafe Beckett's had a fair few fillies have a go at the Ledger. Obviously, Simple Verse, Talent was placed in the race, Blue Stocking. So he does get fillies to run well in the race, and I think he obviously knows what it takes. So at the moment, I'm sort of leaning with You Got to Me, but I respect Illinois and Grosvenor Square. Jan Bruegel, I can't trust without. You made a very good point about without Ryan Moore.
If Ryan Moore was on board, I think he'd be favourite for this.
Who rides, I wonder? I mean,
Luke Morris would suit him.
Genuinely would.
Anyone who can really just like get get after him, like.
I mean, Luke Morris can push and shove for a mile of 6, and that's what he'll need.
It was funny. I was at Down Royal on Friday, and there was a 3-mile hurdler going in a 2-mile or 2-mile 2 flat race. Was it 2-mile 2? I think Happy Jackie. And Ronan Whelan rode him, and he just got off him. He was like, he'd made the running, but he's very lazy, and he goes, those jump jockeys. I know, how did they do it? And, it was just so funny to see, like, from that, you don't underestimate how hard it is to ride a horse that's lazy over jumps. But I can't wait to see this race. Both the Champion Stakes and this tactically are going to be fascinating.
All right, let's move on and talk about the Doncaster Cup. One thing I want to say about the race is that it's named after Howard Wright, who sadly passed away very recently. He was one of the stalwarts, one of the greats of racing journalists over the last 30, 40, 50 years, and a lovely man as well.
You knew him, Rishi?
I was lucky enough to say I did a few things with him for Epsom. We were on the committee doing the awards at Epsom, and always pleasant, a pleasure. One of the nicest people you could wish to meet in racing. So, and it's right that the race is named in his honour, because he loved Doncaster. He loved the St Leger meeting. Sweet William is the 7-4 favourite for the race. Stable companion Gregory 2-1, Trushan 4s, Point Lonsdale 9-2, Coltrane 9s, and then 10-1 or bigger the others. Strong view on this race, Johnny?
No, the ground is probably going to. I mean, if the ground turned off soft, it would have an effect on my opinion on the race. But I didn't. I thought there isn't much between kind of the two at the head of the betting. I'd probably go with Sweet William, and he might slightly prefer softer ground, but like his second to Kyprios last day was fine. He goes well on good ground, finds plenty for pressure. Wouldn't want it to be a very muddling race, but don't have a strong opinion on it, to be honest. Thought there might be maybe like Harbour Winds. I don't know. Is he? He's still actually in it.
Yeah, he's got a couple of entries.
Yeah, he's also
he'd be very interesting. I wasn't expecting him to run in this. If he did run, I mean, I'd run him in this over the Irish Ledger any day of the week. I know he's only trained 2 minutes away, but I'd not a strong view on it, to be honest.
Okay, I like Sweet William because I think they know how to ride him. I think Gregory's been disappointing for me this season, even though he's run okay on a couple of occasions. I thought Sweet William had a very good chance of a blind. 7-4, I think, is decent.
Yeah, this is a bit of a tricky puzzle. We've obviously got the two last winners. Last year's winner, Trushan, doubts over the ground. Coltrane just turned inconsistent.
Yeah.
Like he used to be the most consistent horse, and you knew exactly what you were going to get. And then it's been up and down this year, more down than up.
Bombed out in the race last year as well.
I'm just going to take one chance on Gregory again. Like he was so exciting on his first 3 starts. That Queen Vase win at Royal Ascot was good. I just find that his runs over a mile and 6 and 2 miles, he gets outpaced and then he's staying on again at the finish. And then I don't think he quite got the 2.5 miles in the Ascot Gold Cup, which was a strong race this year, Kyprios and Trulleman. I just think he didn't quite get 2.5 miles. So this 2 mile 2 might be ideal for Gregory. And I just thought at the prices, he's 2-1 where Sweet Williams, 7-4. I thought I'd just take a little chance on it. But it's not a race that I've got a strong opinion on.
All right, let's move on and talk about a race that I think everybody on this panel and lots of people in racing very excited by. The Irish Champion Stakes, Economics 5-4 favourite, Auguste Rodin 3-1, Los Angeles 11-2, Opera Singer 10s. Is she going to run in the race? Opera Singer? She's not, is she?
As of this morning, Aidan O'Brien's 3 in the race are the 3
Auguste,
boys.
Los Angeles and Luxembourg, the former winners.
Exactly,
Last 2 winners.
Last 2 winners and the favourite. And sorry, he's the last two winners, or the last 2 winners of the race, and another sort of contender, but no fillies.
Okay, Ghostwriter 12s, Alrifa 16s, Luxembourg, a former winner of the race, 16s. Shin Emperor 16-1, and then 20-1 bar those. Steve, I'll let you open the batting on this one. How do you see it?
I'll probably look silly after the race for saying this, but I think you just have to take on Economics at the prices. I just think he's very, very short. Yes, he was impressive in the Dante, but the form of that is garbage, to be honest. And then he took a long while at Deauville, I thought, last time to run down JRB, who's a solid horse, but he's not up to the standard of these. Now, he's a big horse. I can understand why they didn't go to Epsom. I'd be slightly worried that he's going to get going too late round in that bend at Leopardstown. Like, I went back and watched the Irish Champion Stakes of last year, and it was just a Ballydor masterclass. Like, they controlled the race. And I just fear that they're going to do the same again. It's going to be fascinating to see what they do, because Los Angeles is going to want a strong pace. Auguste Rodin can kind of do whatever, I feel, at that pace as well. And then you've got Luxembourg in there as well, who is good enough as, he's not going to be run as a pacemaker, but he's good enough that you can't allow him too much rope at the front. So tactically, this is going to be fascinating. But the one that I wanted to be on at the prices, and is 12-1, is Ghostwriter. And I don't think he's getting the credit for the run that he made in the Juddmonte, because yes, City of Troy and Calandigan finished over 3 lengths clear of him, but that was really, really strong form. Blue Stocking back and forth, who I absolutely love. He's pacey. He won't lack for tactical speed, because I do feel like this is going to be a bit of a stop-start gallop. And I think round in that bend, he's going to have the tactical speed to get through that gap. And yeah, I think he's a great each-way bet for me at around 12-1.
Okay, Ghostwriter. He's run some very good races all season long. He's had 1 or 2 excuses as well where things haven't worked out, whether it be in the Guineas, where obviously it's a little bit awkward for him when he stumbled. What do you see?
Well, at the moment, as of we're recording this, 33 horses left in the race, and I think just looking at my stats, my figures this morning, Aidan O'Brien had 19 horses in the juvenile race, which is a Group 2, and he'd 63 entries at Leopardstown and 64 at Curragh. So he has a lot in this.
It's more than some people train in their whole career.
It's mad, and Steve is absolutely right. Watch back the race last year, and it was like a Ballydoyle gallop or a barrier trial. I was actually very disappointed in the race last year, because I built myself up to it, and I would prefer, I'd much prefer when horses take each other on up top. When you leave 3 excellent riders or 2 excellent riders to dictate fractions, not necessarily setting it up for someone in behind, but basically part of a team. They couple horse in America for a reason. These are our tactics, and this is how I'd like you. Ultimately, your boss is the person you're riding for in that race, and you want to make the fractions, and that's how this race is going to work out. I completely agree in Economics. You're coming over to Irish turf here. Do not underestimate how difficult it will be with the tactics of this race. But the Japanese horse, this is the fascinating thing.
It really is.
When Deep Impact ran in, it was Raillink's Arc, and I remember I started a column in the Sunday Independent at the time, and I put up Raillink at something like 10-1. He was sent off like 27s on the toes because all the Japanese came over and like sent him off 1-2 or something.
What? I think he was 10-1 on or something.
Yeah,
it was ridiculous.
It was like patriotism. You can argue the point, but you know, money is money, and like their patriotism is like, and you know what? You have these scenes of races in the Far East where they're like running into the track and all of that, but this was like patriotism on steroids. It was completely nuts. And Deep Impact, in fairness, should have won the race. He's now an outstanding stallion, and he's we spoke about his granddaughter, not that long ago on the show. But Chen Emperor is a brother to Sotsas, right? Now, when he won the Arc 4 years ago, but he was 2 lengths off Magical in this race, right? So it's actually mad. You look back at the Japanese Derby, he finished a fast finish in third in a really, really messy race. And I'm not gonna lie, I don't know Japanese form that well, but the horse that was second, who he probably should have beaten, was unbeaten and was a hot favourite in the race. A very, very muddling race, and his trainer, who I kind of didn't know much about, I'm not going to lie, I don't know much about Japanese form, but I look back in the race, trainer's very well respected. They brought him over to France because he's French bred. He cost like 2.5 million. He's by Soyuni, and as I say, he's so he's going here, but then he's going to the Arc. Now, you can back him at
20-1 for the Arc.
20-1 for the Arc. I'd be more inclined to actually back that, and
Same.
looking at the connections, they're like, okay, he's eating his French oats, he's eating his croissants, he's taken to France more than I thought. It was actually funny. It was such a brilliant interview. I love these like continental kind of people coming over with horse because they see things differently. So maybe this is a slight prep because Sotsas ran here and then went on to run the Arc. But the possibility he's not going to get soft ground necessarily at Leopardstown, but I still reckon he'll run well. I'm inclined nearly to just keep an eye on him with a view to the 20s for the Arc. But economics, I mean, what price economics now?
5-4.
Like, if he goes off 5-4 or shorter, genuinely, I'd practically give up. There's way too much depth to the race. Luxembourg he won the race 2 years ago. He was brilliant in the Coronation Cup under a masterful ride, but he is limited. Auguste Rodin, as much as like White Birch kind of brushed him aside in the Tassos Gold Cup, he will have top of the ground, and he's still an exceptionally good performer. There's way too much depth in this race for economics to be that price. But this Japanese horse, if he can get into a rhythm, I do feel he'd probably be better over 1.5 miles. I'm definitely having a little bet in him here, but back him for the Arc. My 2 bets for the Arc: Alang falling off a cliff, White Birch out for the season. The Arc is not strong this season at all, and he's literally been trained for the race. His brother won on ground. It's a brilliant each way bet at
That's
the moment.
your third Arc strike. No more after that.
I love the Arc as a race, but everything in he ran on good to firm in the Japan Cup, so it doesn't really matter how it comes up. But it'll rule out if it comes up soft. A lot of horse won't run in the Arc. The favourite for the race actually looks very, very beatable. It just doesn't look a vintage renewal at all. City of Troy, no chance he goes there. So the Derby form, forget about that. And he's a 3-year-old, and the trainer's like, I want to win the race with a 3-year-old. 3-year-olds get a great allowance in the race. Brilliant bet for the Arc. I know I'm not on here to talk about that show.
I'm with you, 100%.
Watch back the Japan Cup back. It was the Derby back, the Japanese Derby. Watch it back. It was a complete mess of a race, and he flashed home.
Yeah, I'm with you entirely. I think he is.
He's actually only won one. He's only won his debut, by the way, but his form is very good sense.
I think he's a terrific bet for the Arc at 20-1 because I went exactly the same thing. Sotsas.
And this is it as well. You can then go to the Arc and say, like, this is going to be paid for. Even if he lands in the money, it pays for my weekend.
Well,
and the Arc weekend is one of the best weekends in
his
European
trainer,
racing.
Yoshito Yahagi, is a genius. I mean,
Has won a couple of the Breeders' Cup.
He's won a couple of the Breeders' Cup. He's won in Saudi. He's won in Dubai. He's got international racing sussed more than most. And I'm almost absolutely certain. Is that even a phrase? Almost certain that he would have. The preparation would have been, this horse's brother did this and won the Arc. Well, he cost 2.1 million. Why not do the same thing?
And to be honest, I didn't even know Sotsas has been bought by Coolmore, so maybe he's half thinking, okay, like this horse could be worth an awful lot of money if he happens to, which he would be, but his brother is now a Coolmore.
Yeah. So anyway, that's that. So the way I looked at this race was that I ignored prices and I went, right, who's the economics more potential than anything else?
Who would you have that favourite?
I'd have economics favourite.
Okay.
Auguste Rodin, I still can't. I mean, I say it every time he runs. So I'll just say, can't trust him. Los Angeles, in this company, not good enough over 10 furlongs, I don't think. Ghostwriter, respect, but he's vulnerable. Al Riffa, I actually thought if he ran would be interesting. And then Luxembourg, I don't think he's good enough again against the very best. Shin Emperor was the one I was worried about. So I'll go back to the fact economics is the one I'd probably want to back. But exactly right. When I looked at the prices again, having done that, 5-4, just it's a bit depressing. I hope to get bigger because I still think that he can win.
Did we have any excuse for Alflela the last day? Because like Alflela was sevens in a really messy renewal of the race last year, beating 3 lengths.
I just fear that economics is going to have to go like the Australia route round the outside, and it's just going to get going too late.
He might genuinely only be running 3. I believe that. So like I'd like to see this is probably my favourite race in Ireland anyway because it's older horse against younger horses.
Always
fillies
a brilliant race. The Irish Challenge is always a brilliant race.
Boys against girls, milers against mile and a half horses, intermediate distance in a tricky enough track, but the only track in Dublin. So it's just so much going for it. But when Pat Kyo was working at Leopardstown for years and years, he was trying to get a Japanese horse over to justify his trips to Japan. We all like to go to Japan. We have a Japanese, as there's been very little made of it. It has barely been in the news. I saw it on RTE the other day. I was like, this is amazing.
Deirdre is the only other Japanese horse to run in the race
that's
since
right.
she finished
It was
fourth.
a price,
Yeah, but I think I can imagine that. But Tom Marquand is as good a rider as there is in the business. I would trust him to have formulated a plan on how to cope with. I mean, he's ridden against Ballydoyle enough times to know that they're not just going to go have a clean path to victory here, Tom. But they will have to go hard. They will have to go hard. I can't imagine that Luxembourg, Augusta Road, and Los Angeles they're going to out sprint Economics or indeed Ghostwriter. They're going to have to make it a proper test. And when that happens, when they go a proper gallop, there's always more room for the race to finish. It's when you get horses on top of each other and there's no room, and Golden Horn running across half the field or Al Mansour coming down the outside. Such memorable races, and I don't even go back to Fantastic Light and Galileo and Hawkwing and Grandira.
Like 20,000 at that renewal.
Fantastic. Always a great race.
The tactics, it's just that's what makes racing. We don't know what's going to happen here. We the jockeys don't know what's going to happen.
All right.
What's your the first renewal I saw was Falbrav. Actually, Falbrav and High Chaparral. Falbrav should have won, but if that race between them, there was they'd 20, the amount of Group 1s they had between them was astonishing, and you had Vintage Tipple was in it. It had everything. That was my first renewal, and I was like, wow, this is cool.
This will be the first time I'm gonna actually be at the Irish Champions State. I cannot wait.
Hashtag revelation, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's quite the but I've never. It's a race I love, absolutely love. You remember Pilsudski bolting up in the race years ago
before my time,
under Mick Kinnan, where he barely had to move a muscle. Stuff like that. Just race. So many great memories. So I'm looking forward to seeing whether Economics can do it. It'll be a great race.
Are you racing Sunday?
No, I'm just there for the one day, but cannot wait. We'll talk about the Matron Stakes as well on Saturday in Ireland.
You sound a bit excited there.
Well, the Matron.
Here we go. Yeah.
Well, because I tell you what, I'm going to start with Johnny here. There's a horse running the race that I need more info on, that I'd like to know what you think about Jancis. 2 runs, 2 wins, both at Leopardstown for Willie McCreary. And she might be, and I'm very rarely use this phrase about a horse, but she might be a freak.
She might be a freak. This was Willie McCreary's first, if not only, Group 1 win in Ireland. Now, I should remember this. He won this race with an Aussie Rules filly. Oh, God. Whose name I should remember.
Begin with an F. Fierce
Solana.
Solana was it. And, okay, when I came here this morning, listeners, Solana, exactly 10 years ago, Willie McCreary, Billy Lee, I highly doubt she has the ability of this horse, and I'm saying that just on the basis of the impression. The turn of foot. Blue Drum was a horse that I know, like Shane Foley, was really, really talking up this year, and you can say, the likes of Thornbrook is limited enough. That was a deep enough actually renewal of the Brownstown, and it's just a turn of foot. It's and I think it was 10-1 this morning. It's gone into 8, so maybe there was a bit of activity this morning in the studio. Because I know that I did text Willie this morning, and after the race, Lassie, the Matron's the plan, and
Willie's gone. Oh, Johnny Ward's is on to us now, so we need to everyone back.
Let's have my 5 each way. This is the plan now. Port Fortuna, I honestly don't know.
6-4 favourite.
Yeah, if her or for Fallen Angel, obviously you'd have Port Fortuna. I think almost the fact that she's by Caravaggio and Donica hadn't had a classic win or whatever, and maybe she's a little bit underrated. I think he felt that she wasn't getting the credit she deserved from a Guineas run, and she was outstanding the last day, to be honest. But she's had 2 runs, and both at Leopardstown. Leopardstown's a tricky track, and she'll come into that straight and she goes, okay, this is where I go. She's not a flashy pedigree at all by Tamios, who's like a real run-of-the-mill stallion. That wouldn't bother me at all. Very exciting.
All right. Porta Fortuna 6-4 favourite. Fallen Angel 5-2. Opera Singer 13-2, Jancis 8-1, Ylang Ylang 8. The Guineas win at El Malka 12s and 14s, bar those. Do you like Jancis to win?
Yeah, I do. Yeah,
okay.
yeah. I did. I mean, it was 10s when I was on the kind of plane this morning, so 10s into 8s.
I like Jancis.
Yeah.
Do you like Jancis?
I love Jancis.
Okay.
We're all in agreement this is going to be
Yeah.
the podcast nap. Yeah, 3-year-olds dominate this race. 8 of the last 9 years, the 3-year-olds have won this, and they dominate the market in this. But yeah, I just need to be with Jancis. I remember giving my daughter her dinner. It was about 5:30 on a Thursday, and just seeing this in the background and going, wow, what is this that's winning? And then the SP flashed up at 40-1. I thought, well, okay, right,
Yeah.
this is going to get us underestimated next time. And then she did exactly the same thing the next day. Settled in the rear, came through, 7 furlongs at Leopardstown, and was really impressive in a Group 3 in July. She's been given a break since. This has no doubt been the target. Now, she's going to face battle-hardened fillies in Porta Fortuna and Fallen Angel. And whether she finds it slightly too tough on just her third start is a question mark. But yeah, 8-1 it is perfectly big enough to find out. She should relish the step up to a mile from 7 furlongs. And according to the rating, she only has £9 to find with these two. And she's had nowhere near the opportunities to be able to show her rating. So yeah, 8-1, I'm really excited.
She's one of the most potentially exciting horses running this weekend on a weekend of great racing as well. I'll also give a little mention to my old pal Rogue Millennium, who's due to run for Joseph O'Brien. She's 14-1. She was second in the race last year to Tahira, and I personally think she's actually better going this way, left-handed, than right-handed. She disappointed a bit at Ascot. She didn't run too badly behind Marquise de Sévigné in France last time.
Spent a lot of money on her.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, they haven't got it all back.
Yeah.
Maybe for 14. I'm trying to convince them. I've spoken to Kevin Blake. Said she should try her over shorter. She's got plenty of pace, but I think she could run a good race at 14-1. But Jancis, quite exciting, 8-1 for the Matron. We'll have a spin through some of the other races as well. Not all races that we were going to spin through are priced up. The Flying Five, Brad Sell and Believing, due to line up against each other. How do you see that one?
I'm a bit shocked at the markets here. Yeah, most bookmakers have Brad Sale sub 2-1 for this and Believing around 3-1. Like, I'd have Believing favourite in this. The York sprints at the Ebor Festival were just dominated by that far side. And if you go back and watch it, Brad Sale is drawn stall 3, Believing's drawn stall 13. The only one outside her was Big Evs in 14, and he ran a stinker because of where he was drawn on there as well. So she's worth massively upgrading for that run. Apart from a blip in Hong Kong on too soft a ground at the start, she's been really, really consistent so far this season. She's been 4th at both of the races at Royal Ascot, and then won over this course and distance in a Group 2 in July. Like, she's just rock solid. Yeah, I'd have her favourite to reverse that form of Brad Sell in this, and yeah, she's available around 3-1.
I'm with you. Brad Sell's also had 2 runs at the Curragh, both times after smart performances, once as a 2-year-old and once last season. And both times he's blown out. I think he might have had excuses as a 2-year-old, but 2 disappointing experiences at the Curragh, so I've got to give him a swerve. And I think Believing the Curragh is going to suit her better than Goodwood and York last time, where she was running on both times in another 50 to 100 yards. She would have probably won both.
This is our only Group 1 sprint, 5-furlong sprint in Ireland, and it is weird how we just do not breed sprinters at all. Like, and you get fast-bred horses on occasion, but like, it's kind of strange because very fast horses are worth a lot of money, and we just can't seem to get them. It's really, we've won 2 of the last 3 renewals, but I'm going to go with She's Quality, and this is, I'm taking a flyer here. It's going to be maybe 33-1 when Bet3's private the price up. I spoke to Jack Davison, nearly had a treble at Down Royal, and he's really looking forward to running her. She hammered Jack Ajaro the last 2. It was not a bad horse. She's only a 3-year-old. She's progress in her. And she's not a million miles behind Believing when they last clashed. She's been prepared for the race, tentative vote, but yeah, wouldn't have a strong opinion on the race.
All right, I'm just actually thinking back to all the good Irish sprinting horses over the last few years. I mean, all the Aidan O'Brien horses, all ones, or most of them, all the ones that dropped back in distance from Guineas, they weren't really out and out.
Well, it was funny. There was a filly running at Navan that I mentioned, Irish Rumour, on Saturday, and she'd be running over 7 furlongs a mile. And they dropped her back to 5 furlongs to give her like a kind of a pipe opener for her next race.
Yeah.
And Dylan Brown McMonigal was riding her, and he's like, Jesus, this is a revelation. Yeah. So now she's a sprinter, so she bolted up over 5. And it's funny the way like it can happen by mistake where horses just don't stay. And that's like the one cool cats of this work is they don't like sprinters.
Mozart.
It's just the way it happens. Like Soul Power, Slade Power, with Gordon Lord Byron were good horses in that era, but they were all like to borrow the Withnail and I, holidays, we're gone on holidays by mistake. They were sprinters by mistake. It just happens. Whereas she's quality, this will be her sort of life. But like fast races are good. Like when you go to a race and you see fast horses, it's good. We just don't even want to breed them.
But what Ireland are good at, particularly Aidan O'Brien, staying races. And the Irish and Ledger, Aidan O'Brien's got arguably the top 2 horses in the race. Well, not arguably, we know that Kyprios certainly is. And Continuous also in there as well. The official ratings actually doesn't have much between Kyprios and Continuous. I believe both are going to run. I think you've been in touch with Aidan?
Yeah, as of this morning, he said, like as of only half an hour ago, he said that's the plan so far. So, like, in fairness, that could change. Continuous, if he were to rock up in the Arc, is absolutely entitled to another shot in an ordinary kind of renewal of the Arc. Like, he's beaten 3.5 lengths, you'd imagine, in a better renewal of it last year. I don't know what price he is this year for the race, but they might see this as a stumbling block to the Arc for him to win. I was dead against him the last year at the Curr over a mile and
25 to 1 for the Arc.
24. There are 2 bets for the Arc then. The 2 of them, absolutely nothing wrong with that. He was 14s in the race last year. I mean, for him to win over a mile and 2, Trust Your Instinct, he was no superstar, and like kind of caught you looking, he was well held in the Oaks, maybe over a trip. That wasn't the strongest renewal of the race, but for me, he was very good to win that race as he did over a mile and 2. And if he were to run in this, I still just can't oppose with Kyprios. He just wins. He literally just wins. Aidan says he'd be a very good horse over a mile and 2. I mean, I just can't oppose him. He's not a horse I'd back now because for some reason he's never seems to be popular in the market. Whether it's the fact that he, had borderline a near-death experience with injuries in the past and the sicknesses he's had, but like he could be odds against 10 minutes before the race, and I can't oppose him. Continuous, I'm just not sure. I'm not sure they might have a rethink as to whether he'll run or not.
Okay. I was saying earlier on, Ryan Moore is the only jockey to have ridden Continuous, but I suspect he'll be on Kyprios. Any value in that race at all?
I thought 4 to 5 was perfectly fair around Kyprios at this time. You'll remember back to our Ascot preview. I was keen on him for the Ascot Gold Cup, and he rewarded that. And I just think he's just getting better and better as the season goes on. This is going to be a bit of a fascinating watch in running because Giovallotto has got plenty of pace. Like, has ran over a mile and a half and looked an improved performer this year. If it's top of the ground, which we're obviously expecting there, then he's going to probably loom up looking threatening to Kyprios. But I imagine, Kyprios will then go off and beat him by half a length at the finish.
It's funny at Goodwood the last year. It's one of those races where he's too short for you necessarily to back him. Then you go and make your cup of tea, you do something with, and then you see his SP, and then the race starts. And you're like, how did I not back? He's 8 to 13. He literally just wins. He's like, even though he races lazily, I love horses like that. He just win. And I kind of can see what you're saying, Steve. Giovallotto will be like travelling away. Ryan will be niggling. He'll just win.
There is a host of good racing that will also be shouldering those Group 1 races that we've mentioned already. So I will open the floor up now. Johnny, as our guest, you get the chance to go first with other races, other horses that you think might be worth following this weekend.
Yeah, I'm really big fan of State Bill Farrell, and he runs State Actor in the handicap at, that is the so the Sovereign Pat's just 7.5 furlongs. He's been very well backed in all his starts. I just think the track's going to suit him. And Bill Farrell's, ever since he trained a sprinter, Glockamora, about 20 years ago, that I was a fan of, and he's a very good trainer. As I said, with the 2-year-olds, Rishi, like the juvenile stakes, I looked at this morning, so that you can kind of split your 2-year-olds between this race is over a mile, and then you have the Vincent O'Brien Goff's national stakes as well. So Aidan has so many runners in this. I kind of want to see what he runs. If the Line in Winter were to run, I mean, isn't he favourite for the Derby next year? I'd love to see him run over a mile, but to be honest, it's so hard to see what he'll run. I'd say he might kind of save him for something later on in the season, maybe the Old Race Post Trophy or that. But so I can't really tip any 2-year-olds without knowing what's going to run. But I do like State Actor later on on Saturday.
Okay, Steve.
Yeah, I've got a few. I'm going to start off with
pens
I'm going to start off with Doncaster first. On Thursday, the Park Hill Stakes. Now, 3-year-olds have won the last 4 renewals of this race. Sumo Sam was one of those who comes back into this race to defend a crown, but hasn't been in the same form this year. The one that I like in this is Oxford Comma for Rafe Beckett and Valmont Racing. Now, they're willing to ruin a handicap marker 94 by running into this Group 2 contest, but yeah, she's quite fascinating for this. She ran once as a 2-year-old when third on debut, but yeah, won by 3 lengths under a penalty at Doncaster last time, over a mile and 4, staying on strongly at the finish. She was a non-runner at Goodwood on good to firm ground, so you'd imagine softer ground expected at Doncaster on Thursday. There's a little bit of rain forecast. She's a daughter of Nathaniel, so she won't want to get her toe in. And she's around 8-1 for that race. Flying Childers, Magnum Force was a huge eye catcher at York in that listed race there. Drawn on the wrong side, met plenty of running under Colin Keane. Finished the next second that day. Son of Memas, no doubt going to be kept busy as a 2-year-old. I think the middle park is the plan later on. He's 3-1 with Bet365 for the Flying Childers. The Park Stakes looks a good race, to be fair. Kinross is entered in this. Whether he runs is a question mark. Lead Artist is jocked up. He's 5-1 with Bet365 at the time of recording. I was a big fan of his. I thought it was kind of coming of age performance last time. So Lead Artist in the Park Stakes. I mentioned Lumiere Rock a couple of weeks ago. She's back, hopefully, to defend her crown in the Blandford Stakes on Sunday at the Curragh. She beat Jackie O impressively in this by 3 lengths last year. She's run exclusively in Group 1 races since. She's been beaten by the likes of Blue Rose Sen, Inspiral, White Birch, Blue Stock and an Opera Singer. So this will represent a drop down in class. And because she has quite poor form figures from those Group 1s, I think she could be overpriced based on that back on Sunday. And then just in the 2-year-old races, the Moyglare, just Aidan, please run a few of them. Like, I looked back at this race, I love the Moyglare. 2015, he ran Minding, Ballydoyle and Alice Springs to finish 1, 2, 3. 2016, the year after, ran Hydrangea, Rhododendron and Promise to Be True, who went off evens that day. And then the year after that had the 1, 2, 3 again with Happily, Magical and September. Now, obviously, he has loads of fillies that could run in it this year. I think he plans to run Bedtime Story and hopefully Lake Victoria. Fairy Godmother will head to the Chiefly Park. But yeah, the Moyglare could be a proper race, dependent on what Ger Lyons is obviously going to send as well. I think Babouche is going to head to the Chiefly Park, but he could run Red Letter in that. And then just in the National Stakes, Charlie Appleby obviously has a really good record in that race. Won it in 2018 with Quarto, 2019 with Pinatubo, and 2021 with Native Trail. Both Native Trail and Quarto came from the Superlative Stakes. Native Trail is then going to do... Ancient Truth is going to do the same again this year. Unbeaten in his 3 starts. He never finds that much at the finish. I think he only won by about 1.5 lengths last time. Henry Matisse is obviously going to, I assume, will go our favourite for this. But yeah, I'd be with the Charlie Appleby runner.
Yeah, the Moyglare, I mean, it's just he's... So, like, Giselle was 8-11 first time out against Bedtime Story. I remember they're both, one is Frankel out a newspaper record and the other one is, like, Bedtime Story's been sent off 1-16 twice in a row. I've never seen that before. I mean, did fall in at the Curragh the last day a little bit. I did want to mention one other horse, actually, and I meant to look at the Park Hill. You're on about Ryan Moore. Nobody's ever ridden continuous other than Ryan Moore. He's never actually ridden Grateful, which is interesting. So Grateful rocks up here and did run perfectly well at Goodwood the last day, 10-1. Let me see with Bet365. 13-2 at Bet365. That price might go out a little bit, but Grateful, as his representative in the Park Hill, is definitely open to improving. I think he might suit as well.
Okay. Echo those sentiments about Ancient Truth. The other thing about Ancient Truth at Newmarket last time, you watch when William Buick gets after him, he picks it up and he's actually in front a fair way from home and he just slightly cocks his head to one side and then he has to keep him up to his work to see them off. I imagine he would ride him for a slightly later turn of foot this time in Ireland. So I like him. A couple of other 2-year-olds to mention. Chancellor, I hope, will go for the Champagne Stakes. Obviously, he's 2 from 2. He's had 3 starts. He got beaten at Ascot, but he lost a shoe on that occasion. He's 2 from 2 at Doncaster. So being back at Doncaster, hopefully we'll see him run well again. He's also in the Flying Scotsman, but I hope he doesn't run in that because I want to leave the path clear for Jonquil, should he take up that engagement. Jonquil, of course, very impressive first time up at Sandown, and I'm hoping he might turn into a star for my favourite ever trainer, Sir Michael Stout. I'll also I know you've got Oxford Comma in the Park Hill, but I do like Mistral Star. She's a filly who I think has got better and better. She obviously was asked a big question last time out in the Yorkshire Oaks, where she finished behind Content, and of course one of the Ledger contenders, You Got To Me and Emily Upjohn. She got a little bit outpaced in the straight there. She's obviously stepping up in distance for the Park Hill, and I think that will suit her. Obviously, she's by Frankel out of a Scirocco Star, who's a 1.5 mile horse, so I think that the distance will suit her. So I'm hoping that Mistral Star runs even better than she did last time out. And one other horse to mention, and that is Pocklington, who I've now followed a few times this season. But last time out, 5.5 furlongs at York. He missed the kick, detached at the back, wrong side of the track at York, and then stayed on really nicely. I said stayed on, he was actually flying at the end, respective to some of his rivals. That 5.5 at York, he now switches to 5.5 at Doncaster. The standard time for 5.5 at York is 2 seconds faster than it is at Doncaster. Plus, it was good to firm ground at York. It's going to be good ground, hopefully, at Doncaster. Give him more time to finish off the race. Slightly better draw, hopefully. Hopefully he's not so badly away and he's not as detached as he was at York. I can see Pocklington running a good race there for the Portland. He's currently 12-1. Yes, Almonjad 5-1. Pocklington's 12-1 for the Portland. So those are just some others to mention. And what is an incredible weekend of racing coming up. We could be very, very light of pocket by Sunday evening.
On that note, I used to tell the lads, like, if you think it's bad, it can always get worse, you know.
Always, it can always be
Don't
worse.
worry, it can always get worse.
Right, now before we get into our best bets of the weekend, just to let you know of a free-to-play 6 horses challenge. It is available every weekend with prize pools available for 5 and 4 correct predictions, as well as a jackpot for all 6. T's and C's apply. And now it's time for our best bets of the upcoming week or weekend. Johnny Ward is our guest, and as tradition demands, you go first, Johnny.
I'll go with Grosvenor Square in the Ledger. I just think he's. I rarely see a horse who can dictate fractions like him. He scares the hell out of horses to go with him, and he's actually an each-way price in a race in which I wouldn't be surprised if there were less than 8 runners. Shin Emperor, as I said, for the probably more so for the Art and the Champion Stakes at 20-1 is a cracking bet. I love having a bet like that. That even if I don't have a bet in the Champion Stakes, I can look at this, and if he finishes as staying on 3rd or 4th, I'm delighted. But yeah, Grosvenor Square in Doncaster's big feature. I like.
Steve, what's your best of the week?
I'm going to take Jancis in the Matron Stakes.
Wouldn't disagree.
I was just blown away by her 2 starts. Yeah, this step up to a mile should definitely suit her, and yeah, she's 8-1 with Bet365.
Okay, and I'm going to go for Believing in the Flying 5. I know that Bradsell was ahead of her at York last time out, but Bradsell has disappointed twice at the Curragh. Believing has won her only start at the Curragh. Also, her last 2 runs, both at York and at Goodwood, she was staying on very strongly over those very fast 5 furlongs, the slightly more demanding 5 furlongs at the Curragh, right up her street. So Believing, who's had a pretty good season. I hope that she gets her Group 1 in Ireland on the weekend. So Grosvenor Square for Johnny, Jancis for Steve, and Believing for me. Those are our 3 best bets of the upcoming week. Thank you very much to Steve and to Johnny. Will you be at the Leopardstown and the Curragh?
I'd be at the Curragh now. I might struggle with other work to get to Leopardstown, but to be honest, of the 2, Leopardstown is the one I prefer to go to. But and it's kind of my local meet. But I'll definitely be at the Curragh. Hopefully Leopardstown.
All right. And are you out and about this weekend?
I have to go to Lingfield to watch a horse run. That my grandfather-in-law is bred, so.
All right. Anything we should be
No,
wary of?
I wouldn't. I would more. Well, we'll see.
And the cricket season's over.
Yeah.
How would you sum up your cricket season, by the way?
About as well as my punting recently.
Excellent.
No, to be worked on.
All right. Better to come.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
At
thank
least
you
we're
both.
honest anyway. You know, we're not.
100%.
There is a caveat, like you may lose your money in this bet, like you know. And
Every time.
It
This
is
is
what
when
it
you
is.
read it really quickly at the end.
Yeah, that's because
Yeah. Well, thank you both, as always. Very enjoyable. And thank you for watching as well. This episode brought to you by oddschecker in association with Bet365. As always, if you've liked what you've heard or watched this or of any of our previous episodes, then leave us a kind review on Apple Podcasts or in the comments section on YouTube. This is the final episode of this season. We're going to be back later on in the year, around November, for the start of the jump season. But thank you for following us through the flat season, and thank you very much to Steve, Johnny, and the entire team here at Racing Weekly. But for now, bye-bye.